So I'm giving this talk today from Dharawal country in Wollongong, New South Wales. And I'm very blessed today because many birds and creatures have been chirping away at my window. So I'm receiving their blessings on a beautiful spring day. A bit about me. I am a lecturer at the Nan Tien Institute. The Nan Tien Institute is part of the Nan Tien Temple. I'm not sure if some of you have seen it, but it's quite a beautiful building across the bridge from the temple. And at that institute, we offer higher education. We offer graduate certificates, diplomas, and master level courses in a variety of areas, including health, mental health, and Buddhist studies. And I teach predominantly into health and social well-being. In terms of my research interests, and also just my personal spiritual interests, I'm very interested in how compassion and mindfulness can help us to live more meaningful and connected lives. And I've also been really lucky these days to coordinate a topic with Dr Tan. I'm not sure if some of you know him, but he's a great supporter of your campaign. And we're just about to kick off a topic on Buddhism and psychotherapy. So that's been a great delight putting that together with him. So today I've been asked to speak on spiritual detox. I had a bit of a think about this at that stage because I was, I suppose, puzzled in relation to the word detox. And I was trying to work through what it was we're detoxing from exactly. It's quite easy to talk about substances, for example, or toxins. But when we're talking on a spiritual level, what are we detoxing from? And I think what I came up with, and you might have a different view, is that we're detoxing from our afflictions and habits that cause us more suffering instead of less. And in this talk, I want to talk about the fact that we're not trying to get rid of negative emotions necessarily, but we're trying to feel into them, investigate them, hold them gently, and let them go when they're ready to move through us. So how we let go of these types of afflictions and habits is a huge question. It's a lifetime of work, probably more than one lifetime, in fact. I'd like to delve into this topic with you today, and hopefully there'll be some discussion that arises out of this talk as well. So it's pretty frightening right now, isn't it? For some of us, particularly the younger generations, we're facing uncertainty like we've never known it. In Australia, we started with the bushfires in 2020, which was very frightening. And even before this, many of us, like yourselves, have been very fearful and upset about the imminent climate disaster. The bushfires seem to confirm our worst fears, and it kind of represented for some of us an omen of things to come in terms of global warming and natural disasters. Then soon after the fires, we were faced with this global pandemic, which didn't just put our own health and life at risk, but also our careers and financial security. And for some of us, our imagined futures. So there are a few things I want to say about this historic moment in time. First, and maybe this is a bit unpopular and controversial, but first I want to say that this isn't a mistake. During the Buddhist time, people experienced droughts, famine, war, and natural disasters. And he predicted that this would continue. As Buddhists, we know that this is part of samsaric life, its cyclic existence. And crises don't just arise randomly, but they're the result of a range of causes and conditions that have come together to cause an event like coronavirus, for example. We also know as Buddhists that life is difficult and unsatisfactory, and this doesn't come as a surprise. However, the promise that the Buddha offered was that despite this, and sometimes even in reliance on this suffering, that we have this remarkable capacity as human beings to find peace within ourselves, a type of deep peace that's untouched by these changing circumstances. I often like to think of the analogy of the seedling when I think about suffering and its relationship to the spiritual path. A seedling needs just enough sun and water to sprout and do well. And a seedling also needs a measure of wind. And we need the same for our own spiritual practice. We need grist for the mill, so to speak, And if we're not directly affected by coronavirus physically, we might view this period as analogous to the wind. It can enable us to sprout in various ways. And I should say that too strong winds, of course, can knock a seedling off course completely. So I'm not referring to those moments when we're completely overwhelmed. But for many of us, we're experiencing a good serving of dukkha, and many of us aren't completely overwhelmed by what's happening. We're suffering, but it's not completely overwhelming at this stage. And that can be used as motivation to practice. Without just enough dukkha or suffering, we can fall into complacency and neglect cultivating the beautiful qualities in our own mind. So what I'd like us to think about is how we can use this moment in time, this dukkha, to inspire us to let go of what's not serving us and encourage what might. The next thing I want to point out is that we're all biologically wired to react to uncertainty with fear, despair, and anxiety. The psychological literature and the biological literature reveals that even very small babies are wired to react with fear, disgust, and distress when things aren't going well. Human beings love to control their circumstances, and they also seek comfort and safety continually. Think about the number of times in a day we go to the fridge, or we get a jumper, or we go and get a glass of water. We're always adjusting our circumstances to avoid suffering and seek out safety and comfort. So in the case of both climate change and the pandemic, we're faced with the reality that we're unable to control what's going on around us. Therefore, it's no surprise that the rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues are on the rise around the world. It's very natural and understandable, and we're all adjusting to a very new reality. Many individuals are grieving their jobs, their connections, and their sense of control. Even long-term practitioners of the Dharma who I've been speaking to have been struggling. So I just want to normalise any reaction that you might be having at this point. The Buddha said that experiencing difficult emotions or afflictive mind states results from our conditioning. And I believe that it causes us even greater suffering if we expect ourselves to somehow rise above this. Yes, it's something that we can work on and change over a long period of time with practice. But right now we are where we are, and the art is to accept any response that you're having. I also want to add that in my view, emotions are a very fine thing. They highlight our interconnection, and they highlight the fact that we're touched by the world around us. With an emotion, we're responding to widespread suffering, and in a way, we're responding to the invitation of the Bodhisattva. With eyes all over our body, we're looking and seeing, we're responding to the calls of the world. We're vulnerable and we're sensitive, and this should be encouraged. So in this way, having emotions in response to this point in time is a very, very good and potentially beneficial thing. However, every now and then we might face moments of overwhelm, and I've experienced this right at the beginning of the pandemic. My body and mind was overwhelmed, and it was partly because of the media I was consuming, but also because nothing like this had happened in my lifetime. Our mind can go into overdrive, and sometimes we can't find a way out of this. We're stuck in proliferation, our bodies are contracted, and we can get stuck in a loop. So I'd like to offer you a couple of evidence-based techniques that might help to soothe you during these moments. These moments of overwhelm are perfect training ground to cultivate these skills. And when you can cultivate the skills to soothe yourself emotionally, this will benefit your own future and also potentially benefit those around you. So the first practice I want to mention is self-compassion. There are multiple studies showing that self-compassion can actually change our physiology. It releases oxytocin so that when we're facing distress, we can hold ourselves in a way that takes the edge off of our suffering and might even break the pattern of suffering. There's a famous writer called Kirsten Neff. She's a psychologist who's written extensively on self-compassion. and she refers to 3 components of self-compassion. The first is kindness rather than judgment. The second is common humanity, and the third is mindfulness. And the idea is that when we experience suffering, we acknowledge it. And we do this kindly. We use a kind tone of voice. So you might say something to yourself like, this is a moment of suffering. Instead of, why am I suffering? How can I fix this? What's going on? I need to do something about this. Letting go of those judgments and just simply, this is a moment of suffering. This hurts right now. Common humanity allows us to normalize the suffering. So we might say, we all experience suffering. It's part of the human condition. And then you might ask, what is it I need right now? And often I ask my body, not my mind. What is it I need right now? My body will often come back with a wise response, like go for a walk, have a cup of tea, stare at the birds, be in your body. And you can usually tell the wisdom of this response, because if your body and your mind are kind of feeling more expansive as opposed to contracting, potentially that indicates that's a skillful response. Another thing Kirsten Neff suggests we do is we touch ourselves. So she says that this releases oxytocin. So hand on heart or hand on face. This is a moment of suffering. So that's one practice that I tend to use in moments of overwhelm. The next practice is something called RAIN, and this is a very handy acronym when times get tough. It represents recognize, acceptance, investigate, and non-identification. So recognize, same as self-compassion. I'm suffering right now. This hurts. Accept, for me, I say yes. So even if it's very painful, even if I'm in tremendous distress, I say yes, you can be here, you're allowed. Investigate, that invites us to feel into the texture of an emotion in the body and mind. So you might feel that your chest is tight or your stomach's contracted, that you've got a lot of tension in your brows. So investigating what that feels on a bodily level first. If you can investigate the pace of your thoughts, the types of thoughts that are going through your mind, yes, do that. But sometimes that doesn't really help the situation. We get caught in those thoughts. So a quick way out is through the body. If you're feeling so overwhelmed that you can't touch into your chest or your stomach, it's too much, it's triggering for you, you can use your feet. So use your feet connecting to the earth, grounding yourself. In terms of non-identification, you've probably heard this term in Buddhist circles before, but basically it's reminding yourself that it's just an emotion. It's not you. Fear is passing through. Overwhelm is passing through. Confusion is passing through. It doesn't belong to you, and soon it will transform into something else. So the theme today was spiritual detox. When I consider it, when I think about the word detox, and this might be because I'm a Westerner, what readily comes to mind is the detox process that many folk experience when coming off of certain drugs or alcohol. And we know that this is really messy and it's a full body process, that people are often in a lot of agony and anguish going through this process. If I apply this term detox to spirituality, I can see that it's not that extreme, but something similarly messy can take place. So letting go can be very painful. And that's partly because often we hold on to things because they give us a false sense of security. So I know from my own experience, just over the last couple of days, I've been sitting on a retreat, and I've noticed how I've let go of a lot of habits that I've been clinging on to the last few weeks. You know, that extra cup of coffee, or eating a bit extra at lunch, or doing certain things that I know don't serve me, but they give me a sense of comfort and control. It might be something non-physical like your identity or self-judgment, or, you know, habit, picking up the phone, for example. That's another huge one. We often don't realize that these supposed kind of treats that we give ourselves or habits are ruling our lives, and they're actually getting in the way of cultivating deeper spiritual qualities. So the idea, I think, in spiritual detox is to begin to let go of the aspects of our lives that no longer serve us. And it might be painful. You might go through a type of detox, because what happens when you start letting go of these safeguards and these habits is that you begin to see what lurks beneath the surface. That is what you've been running away from. And usually what you've been running away from is an emotion or an experience that you're not comfortable with. And the idea, just like a very caring health professional would do with someone who is coming off of alcohol, for example, is to be very gentle, patient, get the support you need. You know, if you're having a hard time reaching out to a friend, going to see a counsellor, seeing a professional, but the idea is to orient yourself toward these emotions rather than away from them, and to bring yourself fully back to yourself, to the moment right here, where you can hear the birds sing, where you can see spring bursting with its green vigor, so that you don't miss out on the here and now, and that you can, I suppose, start to process and feel into some of these emotions that you've been too frightened to experience. So I'm going to end on an optimistic note. So despite the many global and social problems that we're facing today, the good news is that we're still right here in this moment, with this cup of tea, with this breath, on this land, on Dharawal country. We have this precious opportunity to develop intimacy and connection with the small details of our lives. And we're motivated to do so because of this suffering, because of the calls of suffering, because we've taken a bodhisattva pledge. And from a Buddhist point of view, awakening isn't necessarily something lofty. It begins right here, in this very moment, in this very body, with this very life. So thank you all for having me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to getting to know you all.
Thank you, Nadine. Wow, I saw the clapping hand. Thank you, Meg. Such a rich and beautiful reflection on the topic. Thank you.